Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 143 different nations looking for the 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. As you know, we're looking at the 143 countries to find these best practices, but also in the continent of Africa with 54 nations. What is going over there? Over 1 billion souls, and the economies are growing. There's much interest and investment throughout the African economy, but at the same time, what is actually happening as far as what is going on for the investments in humankind in infrastructure, in healthcare, education, and all the other investments that are needed to increase the quality of life as we move towards 9 billion souls on the planet by 2050. And I have someone who is actually working on this on a day-to-day basis. This is Nellie Mabula, who is the research analyst, Center for Technology and National Security Policy, which is called TIDES, and also the African First Ladies Initiative at the National Defense University. And Nellie, welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Thank you. How are you?
Glad to have you here. And as you know, we have your colleagues on the Emerald Planet from time to time.
Oh, yeah.
And the Star Tides, as we know it, and NDU are doing fantastic work. So we're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
And thank you for introducing us to this new program that I'd not heard about, this African First Ladies Initiative. But first, give us a little background on TIDES, the work that you're doing at NDU, and then we'll get into the initiative itself.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for having me. TIDES is part of the National Defense University. It's based at the Center for Technology and National Security Policy. And what TIDES is, it's a research project, part of the Department of Defense, and we provide reach-back knowledge support for decision makers and for people that are working on the ground in complex areas such as post-conflict, post-disaster, and impoverished areas.
And as you know, we added to that the pre-disaster development, which is really the fourth leg of this whole thing. And if we can bring up some of these slides, we're going to use these as we move through. But it's just a fantastic program, Nellie, that you have going on there. And looking at the NDU itself, National Defense University, most people don't know that there's really a very heavy component for civil society development as well as disaster recovery and pre-disaster development. Tell us a little bit about NDU itself and its international reach, and then we'll move to Africa.
Okay. So basically NDU is, we support the warfighter, and also in terms of the warfighter that is working in a complex world, in an unpredictable world. So the whole goal is to develop leaders that are going to be, in order for them to think creatively and to work in those complex regions. So one of the main goals is also to provide joint professional military education to the armed forces, the U.S. Armed Forces and others. And there are international officers that come to the NDU as well to get their joint professional military education as well.
Well, I know it's a very complex organization that you have. It's led by Dr. Lynn Wells, who is a good friend and colleague and doing an absolutely fantastic job there. And I know that he's really pushed very hard as far as identifying the technologies, the services, the products, also the people that are making a difference. And there's been a real push for Africa. Why is that?
Thank you for the question. Africa, as you know, it's a complex continent. It has a lot of problems.
And well, 54 nations and very diverse cultures, so
yes, indeed.
It truly is complex.
It's a beautiful continent with a lot of challenges as well. And one of the challenges is, as you know, is conflict and a lot of disasters that occur as well, and poverty is a huge issue as well. So in terms of the TIDES project, TIDES look at these different infrastructures that are, like a lot of them that are existent in the continent but no longer function correctly. So basically, in order for the TIDES project to provide reach-back knowledge support to decision makers that are working on the ground to help out people of Africa.
Well, it's interesting because I know there's a real push in all the countries for education,
Yes.
and we're going to be talking specifically about females, but there's a real push for education across the entire continent, very diverse countries, different geographical location, different resource base,
Yeah.
and all that. So in looking at a country as complex as Africa, I know that you have these very kind of simple goals, but yet still interrelated to the complexity of the areas. In Star Tides, how do these, what are the three goals, and then how do they fit together?
Okay, thanks for the question. For the TIDES project, TIDES stands for Transformative Innovation for Development and Emergency Support, and one of the goals is to leverage the global talent. And the global talent are subject matter experts that are found within the network. So there's a difference to be made between TIDES and the Star Tides network. The Star in Star Tides stands for Sharing to Accelerate Research, and we leverage the subject matter expertise found within that network. And so that's one of our major
And that network
goals.
really is global, so you have people from countries all over the planet
Yes.
that are involved in that, so it's not a U.S.-centric
it's
type of
global.
organization. And I think that's what's very intriguing about this, that you're really trying to leverage resources from the entire planet.
Indeed, yeah. And another one of the goals is to sustain through the private sector. So we want to make sure that the solutions that are brought from TIDES can be applicable in those areas, can be sustainable by the people, by the locals. It's not about the U.S. coming and imposing their ways on the locals, but to
Or
ensure
any
that,
country for
or
that
any
matter.
other country,
Right.
yeah, to make sure that the solutions are sustainable in those regions.
Well, you really have to have buy-in. If anything is going to work, it's just like putting in wells. If you don't have the local community involvement, the elected officials or the
Yes.
chief or whoever is one of the main opinion leaders, and then to teach people to be able to maintain it, you know, they say within about 6 months, each
Yeah.
of these wells will stop functioning. And so I think what you're doing is that you're trying to incorporate the best practices to make sure everything is going to be sustainable and ongoing.
Indeed.
And then there's a third component to this.
Yeah, and that's promoting integrated approaches. So that's done by all the infrastructure areas, because we look at 8 infrastructure areas, and we want to make sure that all of them are integrated. And so we basically promote them amongst the decision makers and people that are working on the ground through the reach back knowledge support that we provide.
Yeah, and I know that you're incorporating the universities, the research institutes, as well as NGO, non-governmental organizations, as well as the governments themselves. So, you know, that's a lot to talk about. But you and I were talking about this right before we came on, the 6 ways people die. I think I would label that a little differently, but it definitely has impact.
Yeah.
What are the things that you're addressing through this?
Yeah, so the 6 ways people die is basically what got the TIDES project started. So the 6 ways people die, in theory, there are 6 ways people die: when it's too hot, too cold, of hunger, thirst, illness, and injury. And as a response to that, we focus on these 8 infrastructure areas that can be solutions to those type of issues and problems.
Yeah, and this really relates to the Power for Peace that we have as a worldwide movement through the Emerald Planet, using the very best of the best, as we say, as far as the technologies and the products and the services are all important to all of this. But looking at this, you're looking at really power, water, and food and all this. And of course, one of the areas, and I really like the way that you're doing this through the TIDES and Star Tides program, you're now incorporating the housing and within all this.
Yes. Yeah, so shelter is one of the infrastructure areas that we focus on. As you know, when a disaster occurs, a lot of the people lose their homes. So they have to find temporary housing that could. So that's through so when you go to our website and you click on the infrastructure areas, we have an infrastructure directory where you can click and you can see all the organizations that provide shelter, temporary shelter. One of the things is that it has to be low cost and easily deployable to those type of regions. And as you know, in refugee camp, they use shelters as well, tents are used, etc. There's one of the members of our Star Tides network that provides shelters to those type of disaster-stricken regions.
Right. And I know that there's a great investment as far as medicines, food, and then the tents, which are really very temporary. But I know this is something that has been really a movement to have more long-term housing and shelter opportunities for people instead of just having it, the tents, the tarps, and all that. And I think this really lays it out very nicely. And then, of course, the portable, toteable, and inexpensive power generation is really very important to all of this. Let's go back to this one here. So the partner capacity, what is the essence of partner capacity?
So building partner capacity within the Department of Defense, there are 4 mission areas, 4 focus areas, and building partner capacity is one of them. So they make sure that we build partnership capacity in different regions through training their military, through providing support to the different militaries that are found in certain countries. So that's one of the focus areas of the Department of Defense, and as TIDES is part of the Department of Defense, we support that mission area.
Yeah, I know this is really tremendous what you're doing, and I know that the food security, and you do a number of conferences and all that. We have some of the experts, but we're going to go over here and the African First Ladies Initiative. That's really why we're together today.
Yeah.
This is really the anchor of this particular television program. Tell us about how this got started and how this fits within TIDES and the Star TIDES program.
Okay, so we were introduced to the African First Lady Initiative beginning of last year, through Dr. Wells. One of his contacts works at San Diego State University, and one of the things that TIDES does well is that we connect people. We connect people that have problems to people that have solutions. And as I focus on the African region, this project was brought to us, and we were going to see how we can leverage our global talent, leverage TIDES to see how we can provide support to this project. And since then, we've kept good contact.
Well, I tell you, this is one of the things that we really don't think much about as far as United States, maybe even some of the European countries, but the real impact that the First Ladies in Africa and also in South America and Asia really have in their societies. And to get them involved, to provide the training and the information is absolutely just an incredible program. We're going to be talking about the 2 co-founders of that, and I just think it's tremendous what you're doing. So we're almost done. So we have about 20 seconds left. What would you like to share with our domestic and international audience?
Well, thank you so much for allowing us to come on the program. And I just like to share the Star TIDES project. Being a native African that grew up in Africa, I was born and raised in Africa. I just think that the Star TIDES project is amazing. Just all the products that are presented there, the infrastructures are so much needed on the continent. And if the African government could leverage this project, it'd be a great solution for the continent that's going through so many problems.
And thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
Thank you.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look for the 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are being used in 143 different nations around the globe. How can we move forward as the planet goes to 9 billion souls by 2050? What types of technologies and services, products, and the people that are going to be part of the solutions to make sure that we have an even higher quality of living than what we have now. Many people are saying that we just can't accommodate those numbers of people. The planet is vastly running out of its resources, but yet through ingenuity and through intellectual property development, there are many ways to develop the technologies that will be helping. We have two individuals with us that have developed a fantastic program. It's called the African First Ladies Initiative. These are co-founders. Right beside me is Cora Newman, and right beside her is Anita B. McBride. Cora and Anita, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. Oh, I love this. It's in unison and it was on pitch. So I think we're doing very, very well. Anyway, I think it's just fantastic what you're doing. And that's why we really wanted to get it on here and talk about this. So Cora, let's just start off with what is the African First Ladies Initiative?
So the First Ladies Initiative actually started off, we were approached by a group of First Ladies from Africa, interested in developing partnerships here in the U.S. And so together with those First Ladies, we identified what their needs were in their work to leverage more resources and support and partnerships around education, health, and development.
Now, what you were doing then is actually you were meeting with them and trying to identify their needs, their goals, and then to be able to match that.
That's right.
So it's not superimposing anything on the First Ladies.
Exactly.
Because they don't like that. I've met a number of the First Ladies, and they are very dynamic persons in their own right. But I think, Anita, looking at the First Ladies, giving them the training, access to resources that they may not have, really is a springboard for them to reach out and do even more work within their societies. So how did you bridge this initial conversation into really setting up this formal organization?
And they want exactly that. They want to be empowered to use their position, to leverage the platform that they have and the voice that they have for the country. They're considered, many of them have said to us, we're seen as the mother of our countries, and that they feel this great responsibility. They are in many
countries, and they really are in those countries.
Absolutely, and they feel an enormous responsibility to really execute on that privileged opportunity that they have to really make a difference in the lives of people in their country, and they are champions for the change that is really needed. And so this initiative really has helped to strengthen their ability and strengthen their capacity. And in order to do that, it's not only leveraging the important partnerships, but it's also building an infrastructure around them that allows them to really be as effective as they possibly can. And that's where the idea of strengthening their staffs through a fellowship and some training, because you're right, First Ladies don't need to be told what to do, but the staffs around them need the guidance and support to be able to support them.
Well, I think going back on what you were just saying there, Anita, as far as the fellowships, they're called fellows, which I think is absolutely a fantastic idea, because you're building capacity within the office of the First Ladies themselves. Correct. And this is something important. And Cora, going into the notion as far as the First Ladies and building that core, that infrastructure of very smart, dynamic people around them, what are you looking for as far as the staffs that come to you, or do you help the First Ladies to develop an idea of the type of staffs they want? Is there a break there, or is it all part of the total?
Well, it depends. You know, the interesting thing is that, and one of the things that we're addressing in our program is looking at the type of infrastructure that's necessary for a First Lady to run an effective office. And so you'd be surprised to see the diversity across the First Lady's offices themselves. Some of them have 3 staff, some of them have 20. And so what we do is we ask them to nominate some of their chiefs of staff, either their chiefs of staff or some of their senior advisors.
So what you're doing then is you're actually allowing them to choose what they consider the best of the best, and really would have the interest of the nation at heart, not just personal aggrandizement or education for their own individual use.
And they do go through an application process. So we have that.
So it's competitive.
And that's vetted through the Rand Party Graduate School. And so there's an application process that the fellows get into. And we've been really impressed so far with it. Some of them are seconded from the president's office, some of them are seconded from the health ministry or another ministry. So we're really looking at the fellows as rising leaders in their countries as well, not just advisors to the First Ladies. Of course, that's a hugely important role as well.
Well, Nita, you've actually worked in the First Lady's office. You have a fantastic background, and through that, you were introduced to many First Ladies as far as around the globe is concerned. And so, looking at that capacity and the types of people that you're looking for long term, how do you attract, or how do they attract the best, and then be able to hold on to them so they're not just quickly moving on somewhere else?
Well, it is very important that the First Lady in her role be seen as valuable to what the national strategy is. And once people know that, and that comes also from the leader's office, that comes from the President's office or the Prime Minister's office, to really give that position or that authority, if you will, in this non-official position, to give them some authority to execute work on behalf of the national strategy. And once that is recognized amongst the government, amongst the staffs that support the president, then there is a greater interest in being part of the First Lady's team. And the one way I like to look at this, and we talk about when we meet with the fellows, is that every problem of the country comes to the desk of the leader. But the First Lady has an opportunity to pick and choose what she can really work very deeply on and shine a light on the progress and call attention to it. So that is attractive to people who work in the government. It's very attractive.
Well, Nita, going back to you, looking at the experiences that you had, and you went across multiple administrations.
I did.
So you saw different First Ladies, different personalities, different skill sets. Actually even different projects that they had interest in. How do you think that was actually aid and reinforced what you're doing through the African First Ladies Initiative?
It's a great question, and it's one that actually gave me the great interest to partner on this project and co-found it, because I have seen the evolution in our own country over the 3 administrations that I have worked on or worked with, that even our First Ladies have developed taken their background, their interest, and their experience and tried to move the needle on an issue that they care about. But more and more in our country, we have an expectation that our First Ladies use the opportunity that they're given to really make a difference. And I did have the great privilege to travel around the world, almost 70 countries, when I worked with Mrs. Bush, Laura Bush, as her chief of staff. And we met with a lot of her counterparts. And the reality is they all want the same thing. They want to be seen as making a difference for the people in their country.
I think it's really interesting you brought that up, the similarities you have, because we always think about the differences, but similarities. I'm a very active Rotarian, Rotary International, and I can go to a Rotary Club. It doesn't matter if it's Kinshasa in the Congo, it's downtown Tokyo, Japan, or it's in Paris, France. You see a similar personality type, dedication to society, really looking towards humanitarian outreach and giving back because they've gotten so much from the society. And Cora, with your background, and I know you're studying for your doctorate, but we have to throw that in, at University of Oxford in United Kingdom. What are you learning there? Now, we've talked about the practical experiences that Nita had. What are you learning through your doctoral program that you're actually putting in to help and assist the fellows, the staffs around the First Ladies, and the First Ladies themselves?
Well, I think one thing that comes through in my field of international development is although it's an interdisciplinary field of economics, history, politics, and in some cases health. One thing that you see is that broad sweeping change in societies doesn't happen without social change. And so looking at the behaviors, the beliefs, the attitudes, and the leaders and role models that exist in each country, you can invest a huge amount in hope for economic change in a country, for example. But if there isn't social change and if there isn't change at the leadership level, you'll stagnate and really see some efforts fail.
Well, your background is in international development. We have a similar background that way. And most of the studies say the human change, the human capital is about 15 to 20 years behind that technological change. So what are you doing through these courses and the seminars that you're providing for the First Ladies and their staffs to be sure that they're actually leaping over decades? Because in some cases, in these societies, they have to leap 50 years, 60 years, 70 years because of just the technology that's changed so rapidly.
Well, some of our partners that we work with there's a new move towards mobile technologies, use of mobile technologies, and so we have met and partnered with Women, which uses mobile technologies to help women's economic empowerment as well as health. We've also seen a movement in health across Africa, and so we look to identify partners like that who have innovative solutions in the especially mobile technology space, and make those introductions. We don't do any coursework specifically focused on technology. We really focus on policy analysis, leadership development.
And you're using the technology within this policy analysis.
Absolutely.
And research and development.
Well, a lot of what we do is virtual, because we're mentoring over the course of the years that we work with these offices. So a lot of that actually just by virtue of distance becomes
So you're
virtual.
doing, like we're doing with our interviews around the globe, using a lot of Skype and internet and those types of things. And I notice, Anita, as I travel around Africa, and even places in Asia and South America is where they're really leaping time. They don't have all the legacy systems that we're tied to in the West and in some countries of Asia. And so many of them are just willing to absorb the technology, maybe even easier than what we have. So looking at I know you're not really focused on the technologies, but what kinds of things are you encouraging them to look at so that they're using the best technologies?
Well, I think this goes to some of the partnerships, too, that we've tried to bring to the table. And over the last 2 years, we try and use all the resources that are available to us to share with the African First Ladies and their staffs. For an example, last year, one of the effective partnerships that we had with the African First Ladies Initiative is with the African Women's Entrepreneurship Program at the State Department. So we worked in a collaborative way to identify women on the ground, women entrepreneurs on the ground in Africa, and to bring them together with their First Ladies as well, the First Ladies of their country, and have them highlight the great strides that they're making in different businesses, including technology.
Cora Newman, thank you for being. We're going to have another chance, so hold that thought. Cora Newman, Anita McBride, co-founders of the African First Ladies Initiative. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for being with us, dear viewer, as we create the Emerald Planet.
She's had more than a dozen fractures. And in the next few years, she faces 2 major surgeries to strengthen her fragile bones. She's only 10 years old. Most people don't worry about fragile bones until late in life. For those with osteogenesis imperfecta, brittle bones are a concern throughout their lifetime. Find out how you can strengthen this child's future.
Diabetes is a killer. After I was diagnosed, I didn't feel sick, so I didn't listen to my doctor. Then it struck. I had a heart attack, then a stroke, and I was only 49.
Most people with diabetes also have high blood pressure and cholesterol, which can cause severe heart damage. In fact, 2 out of 3 people with diabetes die from heart disease or stroke.
Don't let diabetes destroy your life.
Call for your free diabetes survival guide. Choose to live.
we're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we look around the globe in 143 different nations, reaching out to you from Washington, D.C. and the United States, looking for those best practices that can be used as we move towards 2050. As you know, we have this theme, Paving the Way to 2050, Future Earth. Future Earth is actually now, and it's happening. My grandmother always said the best old days are today. And this is one of the things that we have to be cognizant of as we move through, because as we add 2 billion souls to the planet, what are we going to do? How are we going to take care of them? And that involves all human talent, no matter where they are, what strata of society needs to be involved. We have two individuals with us that have developed a very innovative, progressive program that covers the continent of Africa, all 54 nations. We have Anita B. McBride, who's sitting to my far left. Right beside her is Cora Newman. They are co-founders of a program that's called the African First Ladies Initiative. And this is something, as you know, to both of you, we try to have at least 50% of our guests to be female. We committed to that, and so thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
So Anita, I'm going to start off. I know you're at American University. We're giving a plug for the university. We work with a number of interns from there.
Great.
You're executive in residence. Maybe you could talk about what that is. But you're in Congressional and Presidential Studies. I like that title. Don't know much about it, so why don't you share with our guests internationally about what that means, and maybe just a little bit about AU, a little about its background, and what's so special about that.
Well, American University, as you know, because you work with it some, is a 200-year-old institution. It was a vision of George Washington to have a national university in the nation's capital, and it occupied at the time a high place on a hill in Northwest Washington. And it has one of the largest schools of international service in the country. It has a broad reach into the Washington and global community, where it trains students to be future leaders in the country, future leaders in public policy. The Center for the Congressional and Presidential Studies, which is a focus of the School of Public Affairs, really examines this role between the executive branch of our government and the legislative branch of the government.
And I know this is something that's very important, and I'm going to, Cora, if you don't mind, I'll give one more question to Anita before we move on. But looking at this, I know you've had this extensive experience working with First Ladies in the United States, and you really are using this almost as a springboard into this new initiative that you have, this African First Ladies Initiative. So what is the bridge between AU, American society, but also all 54 nations, which are very diverse on the African continent?
Well, I will say I give credit to American University for bringing me on from the executive branch of government to really examine the role of an American First Lady and the impact over our 200-plus year history in the country of how each of them has used the position to really affect social change, as Cora talked about, but also what their impact has been on global diplomacy and politics and policy. It is a natural extension for me to take what we examine as the American experience and share with a global group of women, learning from them, but also sharing with them what some of these experiences have led to and what change that it's been able to affect. So I do see it where all of my worlds, my personal worlds, have come together. My interest in politics and being in Washington, the experience of working in several administrations, bringing it to the university level, but then also sharing it with an outside program that's looking to strengthen First Ladies around the world.
Well, beyond that, though, Cora, I mean, you're talking about, it's almost like this organization that's out here, but you're actually are co-founders of this. So it really has a special role far beyond just, well, we've joined this, it's a nice thing, we're doing great work, but actually it's a real passion that you have. It's really from the heart that you're doing this. So what kind of roles do you see as far as the First Ladies in Africa that you're able to not shape and mold, but really to assist and allow them to flourish in their roles as First Ladies?
Well, one of the things, the way that we designed this program was by gathering feedback from all of the different First Ladies that we were meeting with and asking them, what are your main activities, what are your main goals? And we heard them list this just huge, often huge long list of things that they were hoping to accomplish when they were in office. And so we sort of reverse engineered that process to identify specific roles First Ladies can play that really allows them to pick and choose, as Anita said, what topics they focus on and the role they choose to play. So we look at the role of convener, where they bring players together and help just make sure that there's better coordination on the ground to address a specific issue. We look at them as a facilitator, where they can help to facilitate partnerships from multilateral organizations and organizations within their country. And then also they play a really important role in terms of recognizing, thanking, and holding particular organizations accountable for the work they're doing in their countries. So just by helping break that down for the First Ladies and help them decide what role they're going to choose for each issue has really helped them focus in a way that some of them, one of our First Ladies said, before this program we were on a train and now we're on a plane. We're taking off because we have such a clarity of vision for where we want to go and how we can use our position that it's a whole new opportunity.
Well, Cora, I think just by the fact of coming together, bringing all the First Ladies, because I know you're working, of the 54 countries, you're working with over half of them already. You have a number of the fellows coming out of these different offices. So just by the sheer numbers of people that you're working with and actually introducing them to the resources that are outside of the African continent, but also within Africa itself, it's almost like you're introducing these First Ladies to themselves, and then leveraging those relationships, just like the presidents would do the same thing.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yep.
So looking at that as far as leveraging, introducing them, and then how do you nurture, because the backgrounds are somewhat similar. There's many teachers and healthcare professionals and others, but you have very well-educated individuals that are serving in this role, and many of them are educated abroad, so they have this international view that many people don't have. How do you build on that internationalization that's already there as a germ in each of these, so it can really just continue to flourish?
Well, one of the ways that we're looking at that is just by virtue of, for example, we've had First Lady Laura Bush, First Lady Rosalind Carter, these former First Ladies, Sarah Brown from the UK, Cherie Blair. We've had input from Michelle Obama. So we're working actually fairly globally. We've actually had participation from the Caribbean and interest from other regions. And so we're looking at building networks of First Ladies that are working on a topic, because they are very comfortable in the international space. So we're looking at creating areas for First Ladies to work together regionally and internationally to leverage even more change around a particular issue.
I know you're working with NDU, National Defense University, and their Star Tides program, Anita, and they're special friends of ours. We love what they're doing and how they're doing it. And they're really reaching down into, at the very bottom of the pyramid in these societies. So in your work with the First Ladies, how do you take them so that they're very comfortable, in many cases they already are, but even more comfortable to address every level of the pyramid within each of their different societies?
Well, I think you've hit upon what is absolutely critical to have any success in development, and that is the collaboration across multi-sectors. The relationship with NDU and TIDES is really just starting for us now. We've seen this as an important element to work with the military that is very effective in helping to lead development changes. From a separate experience that I have in working with women in Afghanistan over the last 10 years, one of the most important changes for us over the last few years is working with the Department of Defense and stabilization teams that go in and help us do some very serious development on the ground with women. So this is something that is a new and developing program for us to partner with AFRICOM and with TIDES, and we think it'll be an added element that make this program successful.
Well, in many of these countries, as you know, they say there's about 38 incidents or some kind of armed conflict going on in the continent. at any one time. And so to just kind of say we're going to concentrate on business and civil society development and completely ignore the military is not reality.
That's right.
As far as the African continent is concerned, even though Africa is developing very nicely as a continent, as far as the economy, even better than Europe and the United States. So looking at, we touched on this earlier, Cora, but let's go back and maybe delve down a little deeper as far as the staffs that the First Ladies have, the fellows that they identify. And you're enough years into it now, you're getting multiples of these people are going through the program. What are you seeing as far as some of the more immediate outcomes as far as the positive steps that these individuals now are able to take within their own society?
Well, we look at our program as fulfilling two needs. One is the infrastructure, like we said, of the First Lady's office, and in a sense, setting standards for the Office of the First Lady. So one thing that we're seeing the fellows work on really successfully is helping to, we have in a few countries, the fellows have worked together with their First Ladies to formalize the Office of the First Lady, which means they're actually drafting, submitting, and passing national policy to formalize the Office of the First Lady, which is pretty groundbreaking in that area. So looking at the formalization of policy related to the First Lady's work, we're also looking at them, at a lot of progress that they've made in terms of partnering with international NGOs and developing social awareness campaigns around issues in their countries. For example, in Namibia, the fellows, our fellows who came from the health ministry and the president's office, worked together with those two offices and the First Lady to develop a comprehensive prevention of maternal to child transmission of HIV campaign, which was very, very successful. And it brought in all of the different sectors. The First Lady played that convening and coordinating role at a national level. So we're really seeing, we've been stunned at how quickly they've applied the lessons that they've learned in the fellowship. They're really taking and running with it.
Well, I know that looking at this, and Nita, we're just about out of time, so you're going to get about the last 40 seconds of all of this.
I'll make it short.
But looking at how the educating, working with the First Ladies, how is that impacting in the presidential palace itself? What do you see there?
That's a great way to end our conversation, because what it is demonstrating for the First Ladies, but also for their husbands, is just how effective their partnership can be and how much more they can get done and how much deeper their reach can be, because the president or the prime minister cannot go everywhere, but the First Lady has a little bit more flexibility, again, to hit places where maybe he can't go and to reach people. And that's why it's important to have a good press secretary too. Get your message out.
Well, the whole thing is, it's all about messaging.
Yes,
it's about branding, and I think this is something the First Ladies themselves really are very attuned to.
Very much
maybe
so.
even more the presidents themselves. Well, thank you, Cora Newman and Anita McBride, for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
Art, a universal language, an expression of culture, of self. And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs, or to make a tax-free donation, contact cfripp@aol.com.
Here, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems, and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America and Reading is Fundamental.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. and the United States. And we're specifically looking at the African continent, all 54 nations, going beyond 1 billion souls. And the projection is maybe by 2050, there may be as many as 2 billion souls on the African continent. And so you're looking at a continent that has rich in natural resources. It's actually the economies in general are going at a fairly rapid rate, much better than many of the developed nations. And so you have this combination of a youthful population, a country and a continent that's actually on the move as we go through the 21st century. So how do we address all of these different issues? One of the initiatives is about the African First Ladies Initiative and how you actually work with the First Ladies in a number of these different countries that make a positive impact on their societies. So it's just not during their term of office, but long after they move beyond, the staffs that are educated and as they reach out to the various citizens in these different countries and what are the long-term impacts of what we are exploring on this segment of the Emerald Planet. We have Nellie Mabula, who is a research analyst at the Center for Technology, National Security Policy. I'm going to read this because it's a very long one. TIDES, also involved with the African First Ladies Initiative at National Defense University. And then we have the co-founders of an absolutely fantastic program. It's called the African First Ladies Initiative. Cora Newman, who's sitting immediately beside me. She's also a Franklin Fellow and a Senior Advisor at the Women's Leadership, Economic Empowerment and Health, United States Department of State. And then Anita B. McBride, who is actually at American University. So welcome, ladies. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
I'm going to start off with Nellie. She's the one that actually introduced us to each other. So Cora and Anita, I'm going to defer to her first, since she kind of instigated and nurtured this whole thing. But tell us a little bit about, as a recap, since we've talked about this before, the TIDES and the Star Tides program through NDU.
Okay. As we mentioned earlier, TIDES is the Department of Defense research project that's based at the Center for Technology and National Security Policy. We don't work on the ground, but we provide reach-back knowledge support for decision makers and people and NGOs and different organizations that are working on the ground. And you have to keep in head that there are complex situations that are occurring, like post-conflict, post-disaster, and in impoverished nations. Those are the environments in which our project functions.
And as you always know, always throw in the pre-disaster development, because I think that's very important. And really, Cora Newman and Anita McBride, both of you through your initiative are doing that. You're really helping to evolve and develop these societies in advance of any kind of calamity or natural disaster. So Cora, looking at what you're doing as far as working with these First Ladies, what are, say, 3 deliverables that you always want to have when you first start initiating this outreach to a First Lady? Let's boil it down to one country, and then we can extrapolate, Anita, and I'll let you do that, across the continent itself.
So before we, in our outreach to First Ladies, what we look is to have them identify anywhere between 1 to 3 priorities that and they may not have that right when we first start discussing with them, but we look to have them identify 1 to 3 that we can really support the development on in terms of supporting the fellowship and the senior advisors that come through our fellowship in their office. And so having those really sort of crystallized to some degree. We also look for some of their senior advisors that support in their office that can come join us for the fellowship. And really at the partnerships that may surround them, or the institutions that are working in their country, and trying to get a lay of the land of the corporations, the nonprofit organizations, and the multilaterals that are working on issues that the First Ladies are focused on, and trying to do an assessment up front of how we may be able to move that agenda forward, both individually through the First Lady's office and through this multi-sector approach of bringing partners together to work with them.
Anita, looking at this because of your some 30 years, you're not that old, of course, but you started as a baby, but looking at this experience with the First Ladies in the United States and across Africa, this whole thing about what used to be called community resources, I know is very important. So how do you help them identify the resources? Because in many countries, this may sound a little strange to the NGO community. Most of the time it's not the lack of resources, it's the lack of awareness of resources and how we employ those resources to the benefit of everyone in society. So how do you work with the First Lady and the First Ladies across the continent to say, there really are a lot of resources, let's go find them, and then how do we employ those so they're used to the very best advantage?
You know, one is to tap into their desire to really be a champion for change in their country, and to help them, you know, realize what opportunity they have to make a difference, and to shine a light on some projects that may actually be working, and that there have been effective partners on the ground doing this work for a long time, but that it's needed someone to highlight it. And a First Lady is in a perfect position to do that, because part of the interest is twofold. One, to give a little bit of recognition to partners that are engaging in projects that are making a difference. And by giving some communications or media awareness to it, the First Ladies are seen then in their country as being benevolent towards the people of their country. And it's also encouraging replication of programs that can really help make a difference. So they're in this unique role to shine a light.
Well, we talked about this earlier. It's almost like they're the mother, you know, mama, whatever the last name is, as the First Lady. And that's due on all reverence and love and respect. It's just amazing how the people in these different countries, and so in the West and some countries of Asia, it's kind of hard to understand just the connection that they really have in their society. I'm leaving this this slide up here, and I want Nellie to talk about this a little bit, but I'm going to ask both of you about this as well, how this, the crowd, the bridge, transaction, feedback framework. Define it for us as far as how Tides would look at this, Nellie, and then we'll look at it as far as the First Lady's initiative and how it's actually employing this kind of concept to reach into these different societies through the First Ladies.
Okay, thanks a lot for the question. So basically this framework was mentioned first in a paper that our center wrote. In a paper that our center wrote, it was called From Haiti to Helmont. So basically what happened was that after the earthquake in Haiti, there were a lot of people that were working on the ground, a lot of NGOs, the government, etc. So the crowd is basically all the information that's found outside, you know, like
Let's bring this slide up full frame so we can really go through this. I think this is just absolutely fantastic because visually you're seeing what's going on.
Yes,
go ahead,
indeed.
Nellie.
Okay, so the crowd is all the information that's out there, like social media, etc. So information that's available to governments, whether they're going to use it or not. So information that they can find about like NGOs, what they're doing, what frameworks can be used on the ground, etc. So the bridge is the organization. So right there we have two examples of organizations. There's AFRICOM and the African Union. Like what information can they find out there in the crowd that could be used in their organization to finalize certain transactions. Transactions can be, has food been delivered in refugee camps? Has like different materials been delivered on the ground, basically, that could be useful for the government, for the local governments, etc. And so the last part is the feedback. So whether the information that was provided from the crowd to the organization and the transaction was delivered, was that whole process useful? Was the end goal obtained? So basically, that's a feedback that could be given through, like, you know, the organizations that work on the ground. They're like, yes, the information that was in the crowd was extremely useful for the government, for these different organizations. And so I just think that this model is extremely useful. So it was taken from Haiti. That's why it's called From Haiti to Helmand. So it was used after the Haitian earthquake, and it was also being used in the Helmand region in Afghanistan. So it could be applied to any type of region.
Well, and that's what we're going to move into. Cora, you know, looking at this, I like this because your relationship, of course, with TIDES and NDU is an important part of the work that you're doing. But you really do have, it seems like, this total feedback loop where you're looking at the resources and starting with the focal point as far as the First Ladies, their staffs, bridging that into society, then assess how it's out there and how you bring it back. How are you incorporating that so the First Ladies understand this whole concept and then they're employing this long after your initiative has moved to other focuses like, you know, the Caribbean and South America and different places?
Well, I think what we mentioned in an earlier episode about the roles that the First Ladies can play fits really well with this model that's been developed by NDU, and it's really great in terms, especially now that we can access so much information about what's going on the ground. I mean, in a disaster, obviously, but also just related to any of the issues that the First Ladies are working on. So we have, for the most part, the First Ladies we work with are working in the areas of education, women's health, and women's economic empowerment. So what we do is have, in working with the First Ladies, to choose a role for each of those issues. If they become the coordinator, then they're looking out at all of the different institutions that are working on that issue, gathering feedback. That's what the fellows are doing, gathering feedback from those institutions. What are you doing? How can we coordinate this more effectively? Get that message out to the public. Because there are a lot of resources and a lot of programs that aren't being used efficiently by the populations. Get that message out there through, the First Lady's office has such an ability to get a message out so broadly. And then, you know, we talk a lot about how to assess and feedback to those NGOs so that they understand how to improve their programs.
Well, Anita, looking at this, and I know this is, you're talking about the crowd, but also when you hear about this, the cloud. And many people think of Africa, and you know, we know the stereotypes that they have. But at the same time, Anita, you know, there's more iPhones per capita in the country of the Congo, which is a very developing country, than just about any other country on the planet. And so they've leapt time, they've leapt technologies, and we only have about 20 seconds left. How do you see technology moving your initiative forward? 20 seconds.
Technology is our life-saving devices. And everyone recognizes that, and they want to use it to the best of their ability. And we're there helping to bridge, you know, partners for them as well. But I think it's a recognition that this is the wave of the future to improve health and education. Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for being on the Emerald Planet.
Thank you.
Our credits are going to roll.